Hello there, I'm Adrian, and in this lesson I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the wonderful world of power chords. I want to talk about what a power chord is, delve a little bit into the music theory behind them, and then show you a couple of really common ways of playing them on the guitar. Now, I remember when I first started learning how to play, I learned, like many people I suppose, some folky sounding open position chords which were all very well, but for a 10-year-old who was listening to Iron Maiden, these kind of chords weren't particularly satisfying. And then one day I came across my very first power chord, and wow, it was a truly momentous day. Suddenly I thought, this is the sound of rock music. This is how an electric guitar is supposed to sound. And it was a genuinely quite an exciting moment. So hopefully you will feel similarly inspired to learn about these chords. They're absolutely essential if you want to play rock music or metal music, but to a lesser extent they are found in most other styles of music as well. Let's start with just a brief and hopefully painless bit of music theory. Now, a power chord is made up essentially of just two different notes. Now, I know there are some music theory bores who would dispute the fact that a power chord should be called a chord at all because it doesn't contain enough notes, but I'm not one of those people personally. Now, the notes we need are what are known as the root and the fifth. The root note is just going to be our starting note, and the note which is going to give the chord its name. Together with that root note, we're going to play a note which is the musical interval of a perfect fifth above the root. So one way to find the fifth is just going to be to count up from the root note, up 5 notes of a major scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That note there is the fifth. Play that together with the root, and voila, we have our power chord. And as you can hear, it's got a very powerful, pure and clear sound, and for that reason it sounds particularly good when you use a lot of distortion, unlike a lot of major and minor chords, open chords or bar chords, which have a tendency to sound a little bit muddy and indistinct when you use distortion. You don't have that problem with power chords. No matter how much gain and distortion you pile on, these chords still sound good and still retain their clarity. And it's no coincidence, I don't think, that power chords became popular round about the 1960s, at a time when guitar amplifiers were becoming more powerful and capable of more distortion, and I think players wanted to play chords that sounded good through those kind of amplifiers. So let's take a look at how all of this applies to the guitar. So let's try playing some power chords. Now, by far the most common form of power chord has its root note on the 6th string, on the thickest string. So let's play the 5th fret on the 6th string with our first finger. We're going to make that note our root note. In this case, it's an A note. And together with that, we're going to need our 5th. And that is found at the 7th fret on the 5th string. Play that with the 3rd finger, and there we have our power chord. In this case, it's an A power chord. And you've always got that visual relationship between the root and fifth when you're playing power chords. If you've got the root note with your first finger, the fifth is always going to be on the next string over 2 frets higher, and you can play that with your 3rd finger. That's our basic power chord shape. And the beauty of power chords, like with bar chords, is you can just take the same shape, move it horizontally up and down the neck to get all of the other power chords. And in fact, you can get an awful lot of mileage just out of this one basic power chord shape. You have hundreds and hundreds of riffs you can play just using this shape. What else can I think of? Just off the top of my head, a few well-known riffs just played using this basic power chord shape and moving it horizontally up and down the neck. So once you've got the hang of this basic power chord shape, you could try thickening up the sound slightly by adding in an extra note on the 4th string. So if we were to take our basic 2-note A power chord, you could add in the note that's found at the 7th fret on the 4th string. Just play that with your little finger and you've got just a power chord which is just subtly a bit bigger and thicker sounding than our initial 2-note version. Essentially what we're doing there is we're adding in another root note which is an octave higher than the note you're playing with your first finger. So they're both A notes but an octave apart. So now we've got the structure of the chord is a root and then a 5th and then another root on top. And both this 3-note power chord and the 2-note version are equally common, I would say, and it's just a question of taste which one you use at any given time. Now, one further thing you're eventually going to want to do is to learn the names of your power chords all the way up and down the neck. It's easy enough to do that because these chords just take their names from the root note which is found on the 6th string. So it's just a question of learning the names of those notes. For instance, the note here at the 1st fret on the 6th string is an F, therefore we plug in our power chord shape, we've got an F power chord. Incidentally, power chords sometimes referred to with a number 5 after their letter name if you see them in sheet music and guitar books and so on. So that will be called F5, the 5 referring to the perfect 5th interval found within the chord. Then it's just a case of counting up your musical alphabet to get the names of all of the other chords. So F, F sharp, G, G sharp, A, and so on. I'm not going to go into that in too much detail now in this lesson, but I will put up some reference chord diagrams on my website just to help you with that stuff. Now, the next most common power chord form is the power chord whose root is found on the 5th string. And to play these, it's simply a case of moving our 6-string root power chord shapes 1 string set over. So we're moving all of the notes down towards the floor and we've got a whole new set of power chords. So let's just take a brief look at one of these chord shapes. We could play the 5th fret on the 5th string. That's now going to be our root note. In this case it's a D. Then the 5th is still going to be 1 string over, 2 frets higher, but this time it's going to be at the 7th fret on the 4th string. That's a D power chord shape. Like with the 6-string root shapes, you can add in the extra octave root note with your little finger. So you could play the 7th fret on the 3rd string to make a slightly thicker sounding D power chord. Incidentally, when you're playing that octave root note, you've always got the option of using your 3rd finger to cover the 2 strings at the same time. That's what some people prefer to do rather than using the little finger. So I'm just bending back that 1st joint on my 3rd finger to play both the 4th and the 3rd strings in this case. So that's our D power chord with the root on the 5th string. One technical thing just to watch out for when you're playing 5th string root power chords is you want to keep the 6th string muted. You don't want that sort of accidentally ringing out or things will start sounding messy. So what I tend to do is just to nudge into the 6th string with the tip of my index finger just to mute it, and then even when I hit the 6th string with my pick, it's not going to be allowed to sound because I've got it muted there. So the same things apply to these shapes as to the 6-string root power chords. You can move them horizontally up and down the neck to get your various different chord names. The difference here being that the chords are named after the notes found on the 5th string. So for instance, we've got an A sharp note here at the 1st fret on the 5th string, therefore this is an A sharp or A sharp 5 power chord, and then we can just work our way on up the neck, B, C, C sharp, D, and so on. Again, I will put some chord diagrams up on my website for reference purposes. So have a play around with these 5th string root shapes. You can try combining them with your 6th string root shapes. There are many famous riffs which do combine the two. A famous example being very famous riff which alternates between 6-string root power chords and 5th string root power chords. So hope you have a lot of fun playing around with these power chords. I am planning on doing a part 2 to this lesson where I'll be looking at some slightly less common ways of playing power chords. So I hope to see you for that very soon. Take care of yourselves. Bye bye.